Hello, awesome people.
Hi, Melissa.
Hello. I'm muting myself and going off into the background.
Yes, we coordinated outfits because we coordinated outfits the last time we presented together. So we're Miss Frizzle this time. ×2.
That seems like a good choice given the proximity to Halloween.
Well, eerily enough, we have lots of matching outfits. There was a back and forth of which matching outfit we would wear.
Well, obviously not the one from September.
No, but we have some of them are matching and some of them are coordinating. This isn't a costume, it's our regular outfit. Oh, you have a really good one though, Christina. Christina has a good Miss Frizzle.
Thank you for attending today's New York City Department of Education Beyond Access Forum. This event is brought to you by the DOE Division of Specialized Instruction and Student Support and the Office of Digital Inclusion and the New York City School Library System. A special thank you to all our partners. Be sure to visit their booths throughout the day. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub using the link sent in your confirmation email. Once you are logged in, you can visit the partner booths to learn about their offerings and book a meeting or live chat with them. Network with today's attendees via the registrant directory and chat features. Gain access to all the conference resources in the download section and enter our passport to prizes. Throughout the Conference Hub, you will find buttons to enter into our passport to prizes. Each time you find a button and fill in a form, you are entered into the raffle. All entries are eligible for a series of prize drawings, only one prize per participant. We will announce winners via email at the end of the conference. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions for the presenters during the session, please submit them through the Zoom chat feature. You have the option to turn on closed captioning by clicking Show Subtitle within your Zoom console. Be sure to use the conference hashtag NYC Schools Inclusion in your social media posts. And for CTLE credit, I will drop in the URL in the chat box. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's so great to see so many familiar names and faces and pictures in this little Zoom screen. So I am just going to quickly share my screen with you all and we can get started. Share. So present. Okay. My name is Jessica Hochman. And this session is called Campus Libraries, One Library, Many Communities. We'll be talking about how we create and support different senses of communities on campuses that are contain many schools. So everyone in this session is a campus school librarian or was a campus school librarian in the case of Donna, who will introduce herself. So I have a feeling many of you know this, but a campus is a building that is a large building in most cases, and it contains many schools, multiple schools. They can house a mixture of different kinds of schools from elementary through high school. and they can house public schools and also charter schools. So the library is staffed by usually one librarian, sometimes multiple librarians on those lucky campuses. And it serves ideally all schools on the campus and is supported by those schools. And you'll hear more about that from our discussants today. And I'm really excited to introduce all these folks. This is a quick overview of our names. And then we're just going to very quickly let everyone kind of say hello and say the campus that they work on. And then we'll get started talking about campus libraries. So one thing to note is that when COVID closed schools in March, the Campus Librarian Network, which is a network, a support network composed of campus school librarians who meet regularly and have professional development opportunities and just kind of build community among librarians who share similar experiences. In March, the CLN really jumped into action and began having weekly meetings for campus librarians that provided them with ideas and professional development, resources, and a space for conversation amongst each other that were helpful like in that moment. So people were sharing everything from great book lists to ways to connect students to ebooks, but also just kind of how are you managing this remote moment? So from this work and from that kind of support system comes this conversation in large part. So let's get started. So Donna, why don't you start? Or I'll click through the slides and everyone can just kind of say hello. And
hi, my name is Donna Gray, and I am a coordinator for the New York City School Library System. Good to see you guys.
And Donna was a campus librarian before her illustrious stint in the OLS. Thus, she has kind of two perspectives that she's here to share with us today.
Oh, that's me. Hi, my name is Marie Southwell, and I am the librarian at Graphic Arts Campus Library.
Thanks, Marie. Next, we have Christina.
Hello, my name is Christina Gavin. I am one of two librarians at Lehman Educational Campus, which is in the Northeast Bronx.
And you can find her in this picture because she is Waldo. Teresa, you're up.
Yep. Hi, I'm Teresa Tartaglione. I'm the campus librarian at the Martin Luther King campus.
Thank you.
Hi, I recently
I
changed
didn't
my
change
name.
your
I'm
name.
Rachel
Sorry.
Chapman. I am the librarian at the Westinghouse campus in downtown Brooklyn.
Thanks, Rachel. So the kind of big question that we're thinking about today is how can campus librarians serve multiple, diverse, coexisting communities with one library? And so we're going to take a look at that now. And so we have a series of 4 questions and different groupings of our panelists will respond to those questions with their expertise. And, if you attendees in the session have thoughts or questions, definitely, stick them in the chat or submit them to the questions because we'll have time for discussion at the end. So first, we're going to talk about what does community mean in a campus library setting. And for this first question, we're going to have Teresa, Rachel, and Donna kind of give their thoughts to kick us off.
So I guess I'll start because you said my name.
Yeah, I did.
So I'll just go. So for me, it was always about being a central space that everybody on the campus could be in. It's really the one place on campus that not only does everybody have access to it, but it's not restricted to like, oh, will my kids use the gym at this time? Like there are other shared spaces on the campus, but it's usually very separate. You know, the gym classes for one school go here and they only use the cafeteria during this period. Whereas the library, there's actually overlap. So students and teachers and staff members from all of the schools might be at the library at any one time. So students can actually interact with each other. And that's where you actually can start to create community and bring people together. And one really great example that we did last year, pre, you know, all the things, was we started meeting as a campus. All of the different GSAs from all of the different schools on the campus started meeting together. And it was just like the most beautiful thing in the world. We had like 45 students and all of their faculty advisors. And the kids were like, I've never seen so many people like me in one spot at one time. And then all the adults were crying because like, that's so beautiful.
In
So we-
case folks don't know, Teresa, can you say what GSA is?
Sure. The GSA is the Gay Straight Alliance. And it is, you know, for all queer students and allies to be together. We had a little like historical talk, and then they just did like crafts and made bookmarks and pride buttons and ate snacks. They were a big fan of the snacks. But it was just a way for everybody to come together and be in one place. And it was really beautiful.
Thank you so much, Teresa. That is fantastic. Rachel, thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we actually have done similar things. GSA, our GSA is Gender and Sexuality Alliance, but I think it's the same, under the same umbrella. But the library is that safe space. And I think because the librarian doesn't typically, at least in high school, assign grades, it is just a place where kids want to be and want to go, and a very unique place within our school building. Like there's nowhere else really that is designed specifically for students' needs and students' requests. So I think that really kind of helps us develop the community. I have a middle school and 2 high schools, so they're very different populations, but they can still come together for a common goal in the library. And every school uses the library in a different way, even in remote learning. So some schools really value the open access, the time during lunch, the open space. Some schools value the research skills lessons, and I'm in those classes all the time. Some schools are, one school, the smallest school, has astronomically larger checkouts than the other 2 schools because they've prioritized independent reading. So I think that just being flexible is, to me, the most important thing about a community, because each population's needs are so different.
I love that mention of flexibility. That's so great and important. Donna, what are your thoughts?
So I think Rachel and Teresa really summed it up well, but I will add that when I was a campus librarian, for me, the library space was like home base for all of the students, and well, home base for the entire campus really. And the idea that I worked with was that everyone belongs in the library and everyone can therefore find themselves there. So no matter if you're the supposedly really smart guy, or you're the person that like is super popular, or you don't have that many friends, like the library is your home. And I tried to make it where the library was not totally academic and it wasn't totally like an entertainment space. It was everything. And I think especially in a campus library, that's super important to have a space where people can, 1, wind down, and 2, really find the resources that they need to achieve.
Thank you so much, Donna. Are there things that you have noticed about, like, as you look across campus libraries in your work at OLS? It seems like, I mean, just one thing you mentioned, the library as people's home, like, was a theme that all three of you really spoke to. Are there other things like that? I'm just curious.
I think one thing for me that I've seen in the campuses that I've visited and in the CLNs that I attended is, I'm biased because I was a campus librarian, but I feel like we are super like focused on organization and being instructional leaders, because we know that we have to serve different many different schools in different ways. So you have to be super organized, and you have to be, all libraries, in my opinion, in our system are welcoming. But I think for a campus library, you have to really put out that welcome mat, because you want all of the kids to feel like that's their home, right? And it's different. I worked in a regular library with only one school, and everyone just felt like, okay, this is my space. But it's different when you work in a campus and there are distinct spaces for students where they cannot go. So you cannot be on the third floor if you're in this school, bless you. You can't be on the second floor. You can't be, so the library needs to be that space where, one, I as an instructional leader can meet the needs of every single teacher, no matter what focus that school has. But two, also, like, all of my, and I call them my kids, but all of my kids are welcome no matter what. And that's very difficult because we wear many different hats, but I think all campus librarians wear them really well, because that's the nature of the job.
Thank you so much. And that like kind of tees up our next question so well, which Christina and Marie are going to wrangle. What has remote schooling revealed about your school communities? So we heard a lot about like people gathering in the space, but then how do you kind of foment that online? Christina, you want to start it off?
Actually, I would like to defer to Marie.
Very well, Marie.
All right. So, our campuses are all very different and our schools are very different. Christina has like mega differences. I have 3 schools that I work with, and 2 charter schools that don't interact with me at all. One is an elementary, one is a middle school. What it revealed was a lot of disparities in technological understandings, is how I'll put it. Because one school is a CTE school that's focused around technology. So they were like, let's revision digital learning. And what I provided for that community was more based around anime, everything anime, because the kids still really needed clubs. And so I continued to support that through my anime clubs. And the other school, one of the other schools is also a CTE program, but it's building and craftsman's trades. So they needed a lot more help with, how do you set up a Google Classroom? How do you make a PDF? Some of the tech ed stuff was all really, that's what I spent a lot of time working with them. And then the middle school was kind of like, it had already Googleized, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was also finding e-resources. Like how do you teach that if you don't have the book? Or what are some legal PDFs we can use as opposed to, or let's try the databases. Yeah, and I mean, I knew going in that there'd be a really immense digital divide because my library served as a hub for kids who didn't have the best Wi-Fi to come and do their work in the library. So we kind of like brainstormed around that as well. And now, Christina, you get to go.
So like Marie was saying, I also noticed kind of a strong difference in leadership styles. I saw sort of how information comes from top down from the DOE, and my campus serves 6 schools, so I would notice a stark difference. Some schools didn't communicate information from the DOE. Some schools would directly shoot out every single thing they were getting. Some schools would constrict access to information. I noticed a lot on my end, and also it brought into, it's kind of forced the library to come more center stage. When we were in the building, a lot of times I would reach out to administration and ask, what are your focus for the library? Like, what are your goals? And nobody really had any goals. So it was kind of whatever I wanted to do, I would do. Now that we're going into remote learning again for now the second time, administrators are paying more attention to the library and have some deliverables that they want, which is exciting. So it's gotten a little bit more attention for the library from the administrators and from the teachers.
That's so great. Do you feel like your administrators like see of value more in the library because of remote learning?
I think
like, do you think they're conscious of
someone
that?
I think that remote learning has like raised questions for them of what is the librarian doing during remote learning? So I think that my co-librarian Janelle Robinson and I have raised awareness of what the library is capable of doing, what we have been doing, by just communication, creating newsletters, sharing information with them, telling them, hey, other schools are doing this. Sometimes one thing in a campus, sometimes the schools sort of compete among each other. So it can work to your benefit to be like, oh, well, this is what we're doing for this school. And then other schools might say they want to have that program for their students as well. So I think that because they don't see us physically in the building, now they are more interested in knowing what we're doing and what projects we want to do. And they have their own ideas too, which is exciting because in the building they knew we were there and they knew I was there and I knew what was going on in the library all the time, but they just knew it's up, it's open, people are there. They weren't really up to date or is in as much communication or didn't 100% understand all of the things that were happening. So I think that now that with the physical distance because of remote learning, they are taking a greater interest in what possibilities there are for the library.
I, for one, loved being untethered from the library because most of my conversations focused around open access during lunch, which was beautiful. I'm glad we all had it, or who was going to get first dibs on the library space to hold some PD. And I made sure they knew exactly what the librarian was doing and how it wasn't just a physical space. I mean, it's more of like a culture, it's a mentality, it's a gathering place. It's all of the things that all my librarian friends have described. It's also like students are able to kind of supervise themselves. I mean, not that I've ever let anyone run wild, but that's kind of the whole setup of the library. So I loved it. I was like, this is my time to have them reframe the conversation because I'm really tired about talking about who gets to use the library space. It felt like I was always negotiating. I mean, someone wanted the bullies who got the space last. We don't even talk about that anymore. And that has been a true revelation. And like, thank God for COVID, but not the deaths. We engage in much more like philosophical discussions, digital access discussions, like things they assume kids know that I was like, no, I don't think they know that. Everything was brought to the forefront. So I've enjoyed remote schooling, not always Zooming, but I did. I really have liked the shift in the community and culture.
Thank you so much, Marie. That totally also, again, tees up our next question so well. But I want to kind of just put a fine point on, I love what you said, that the library is really a culture, and that this moment really showed that it's not just a space that people are fighting over for hosting meetings, but it's actually like, it's a vibe, it's an energy, and like, it's a, that it's so much more than just like a room full of tables. And this really leads nicely into the next question, which I want all of you to respond to. I'm really into this idea of COVID learnings, like that there are things that we are forced to kind of think about and change, across our society and culture. Like, for example, I went to the DMV the other day and I made an appointment, and I was in the DMV for 15 minutes. And I hope that never changes. I hope we never go back to DMV 1.0. But so, and Marie, you kind of brought up some of these things, but what are some of your best COVID learnings, like strategies or resources, or, as Maria was kind of talking about, like elements of practice or thinking about the library that you want to kind of hold on to and like carry beyond this moment. And I would love to hear from all of you on this. Anyway, Rachel, thank you. So Rachel will kick it off for us.
One of the things that I want to keep from this time is we've been talking in the chat about missing our students and kind of interacting with our students and talking to empty Zoom rooms. If you've done any teaching, is like very stressful. And one of the things I want to keep is some of the social media things that we've done. I think I was inspired by Christina to do like a first chapter Fridays on Google Classroom. And I read those 2 books last Friday. And then Marie and I started a video web series that is currently on hiatus until we can figure out the remote start to school was a little bit different than what happened in the spring. So once we get on a more regular schedule, I hope to bring it back. But we had a video web series where we book talked things, and we book talked 4 books on a topic and live, and then put it on IGTV and YouTube and shared it with our kids. So I think some of those like fun tech things that I don't think we would have ever had time to do that. And I know Christina is not a solo librarian, but so many of us are. It's sometimes lonely to be the only person in the building, so that collaborative effort and like using that technology to reach more kids was really awesome.
I have not been a solo librarian only since the pandemic started. My co-librarian started their first day was the day that everybody had to stay home from school. So that's also going to be, that's something that's new for working as a remote librarian, and also like working with someone else is new. So I think when we get back to the building, there will also be like a period of getting to know what it's like to work with another librarian in a school setting. My co-librarian has background working in the public library, so there were other librarians there, but not in a school. Will be both of our first time working together with another librarian in the building. Some things that have been cool are because there's now 2 of us, and also because there's more flexibility without having to be like the pedagogue in the room at all times for 6 or 7 lunch periods in a row. There's been greater flexibility in terms of participating in department meetings, finding out what's going on in the school. We got our web presence up, and we're getting that, like we're working on like with our administration. Now we have like a specific supervisor who tells us what to do, working on standardized channels of communication between the schools, even though they all kind of like to do things in a little bit of a different way. We've centralized sort of information that's useful about the schools that we need to share with each other. We also have a social media presence on Instagram, and we're doing feature Fridays for one of our schools, and I'm doing first chapter Fridays for 2 classes that I'm teaching this semester. So using those methods to push out, to promote reading for pleasure with students, and also with the new contract the DOE has with Overdrive, we have Sora available, so that has been really great. Something I hope that we continue to have when ever schools reopen fully are remote learning for professional development. Certain times there would be PDs offered, but they'd only be a couple hours. And because I'm way up in the Northeast Bronx, it would be hard to ask for, if I could take the day to go kind of far into Manhattan or Brooklyn, just for like a couple hours PD, and it would affect how the library would be open. So I hope that, I definitely miss seeing people in real life, but if we could have a blend of in-person professional learning and virtual professional learning when things start reopening, that would be great. Also, just a lot of reliance on the listserv has always been, Nice List has always been a great tool, but the support from the Office of Library Services and other librarians sharing information has been more valuable than ever, I think, now during this pandemic. Someone's raising their hand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I don't know if you wanted to do questions later.
Maybe let's do questions later. We'll go through everyone's responses to this question. And my computer's being a little weird. When I try to look at anything but this PowerPoint, it gets mad at me. So go ahead, Teresa.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what Christina was saying at the end, that I think the nicest thing that I saw come out of this was the professional support that I felt from all of the other librarians in the city. When be it Campus Librarians Network, I just said, I think we should have more meetings, and Russell made it so we had them every week, and all of the different librarians were presenting, and we had people pulling in, and Melissa and Library Services came up with the translation of practice in a couple of days. And anytime anybody needed something, you just, you had your posse, you could text, but you could also put it on the listserv, and 5 people would have best practices and answers, and you never felt alone. Whereas, as Rachel said, you often feel alone when if you are a sole librarian, you're just 1 is the loneliest number. You're just you in the library and everybody else. And it just was so nice to be part of such a community. And it really, especially Campus Librarians Network, we came together. There were people who could never make it to meetings who were in all of the virtual meetings. I think Russell was saying we had 40 people who couldn't ever come were coming to the meeting. So I think that was the nicest thing, and I hope that lasts. I hope that keeps going.
I love that. Thank you so much. Donna, do you want to share some thoughts, and then we'll hear from Marie again?
Sure. I think what I've really taken from this moment is the idea, that old dated idea, we've always done it like this. That's no longer going to work, right? So we can re-envision our learning, we can re-envision how we're going to grow. And this is really our time and our opportunity to flip the idea of what schools and libraries actually look like. And it's also the time, and a lot for me, I'll make an I statement. I think when I was in the library, I tended to ask for permission. And then if I got the no, it was okay, I'll try again later. And now I think this is the time when we're not taking no for an answer, right? So the pandemic has proven that what we thought was impossible really isn't. So Christina mentioned the Sora. So we finally have a platform in Sora that provides access and equity for students throughout New York City, right? Sora didn't pop up last year. Sora's been around for a while. And I think some positives that have come out of the pandemic is we're doing things differently and we're thinking differently. And one thing I know that we're not going to go back to is not having a platform like Sora that levels the playing field for students throughout all 5 boroughs, right? So they have access not only to our collection, but also they can access the public libraries as well. So I think building connections is something that librarians always did, but in pandemic mode, we're doing it even more. And people are finally seeing us as information sharers and gatherers, and not just as people who have the calendar for open access. And I think that's really important. And that's a pivot that I'm very proud of.
And now I will speak, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it blew the paradigm up in a couple of schools. I've literally heard a principal say to me, you know, the whole faculty, you know what, tests no longer matter. That includes the regents, at which point I almost fell off my chair. So like what Donna is saying is the old stuff we were trying to do in our classrooms isn't working. And so that gave me a chance to like wedge in with my, what do you gotta lose attitude towards independent reading, maybe doing some like project-based research stuff. So I have just edged my way in. That's one of the best COVID learnings. And then I am one of these people who has like an action plan that writes out like their timelines, like in 5 years, this will happen. I learned it in library school and I still do it. And oh my gosh, my timelines blew up. Like things I didn't think I could do for 5 years, I was able to do like in April or right now. So it just made the ground so much more fertile for individualization, collaboration, and in some ways, I feel more connected now than I ever did before. You know, Rachel and I did our What to Read, which was awesome. We would never have thought of that. And then we're like, oh yeah, of course we continue it. It's done virtually. Yes. And yeah, I think those are like the things that really stand out for me is just I really do hear the giant crash of paradigm shifting. Everyone's not coming with us, but they're making little edges to it, you know, like maybe we should teach a book in history class. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it. More shifting, more shifting.
Thank you so much, Marie. And I mean, all of your comments are so great. And I just want to like lift up this idea that kept coming up that there are all these things that we thought were not possible before. And now suddenly we realize they are possible. They are like revolutionizing our practice, and they're really important to in maintaining some of the values of the library, like equity and access, and like actually make our work more potent. So thank you all for those really thoughtful COVID learnings. So last question, and then we're going to open it up for questions from our participants or our attendees. How do you preserve the uniqueness of your various school communities while still meeting everyone's needs with one library? And I guess, who are we going to hear from on this one? Rachel and Marie and Teresa, but you know, anyone can jump in.
I'll start. So one of the things I thought about when we were thinking about this question, I think we presented on this a couple months ago as well. And I don't remember if I said this or this was just in brainstorming, but the opportunity to advocate for our kids and advocate for libraries and advocate for our library program is, I feel like, how I help preserve the uniqueness. I don't know if that's the direction this question was going in, but like I said before, like I said before, like I have 3 very different schools and different populations of kids that are attending, different needs of the library. But one thing I can do is advocate for that access, for this space. This is the student space. This is not, you know, this is, the library is their domain. Like Donna said, it's for everybody. And so just advocating for that space, standing up for kids when they don't maybe have the platform to stand up for themselves, like keeping the library open during lunch, not allowing, or like not allowing, pushing back on closing the library for testing for weeks at a time, those kinds of things. I think that's how I preserve the space as a place for students.
Having a campus librarian can force your principals to try to get along. I think that is like one way I preserve the uniqueness. A lot of times I don't think they realize that their interests all overlap anyway. So like, what's the big deal? And like disabuse them of the notion that they're like the singular school entity on the 4th floor, but maybe they're like also a part of the campus entity. And I like to call that my people library people. So also you're a library person. You exist in this culture of library people. Yeah, I've seen, one of the great things is, for the communities is they do see the library as a value component of all 3 schools that I work with. How do I meet various needs? Again, they overlap more than most people realize. You know, the idea that, oh, I lost my words and I hate it when I have, because I'm sure it was like really brilliant and it would have brought the house down if I could remember what I was saying.
Well, what you said last time, I remember because it was very brilliant, was that, you know, someone thinks that they need to solve this issue and someone thinks they need to solve this issue, and actually both issues are solved with this thing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like, you just have to look for that synergy.
Yeah, it's all about finding the middle of your Venn diagrams. And I just think that people don't realize that. I'm like, you want exactly what you said. You want this, it's all the same thing. They are very unique though. They're very unique. And I think it does help, you know, creating your own culture and identity as a library person, and growing that. I've definitely been growing it for the last 3 years. So, you know, it's just not the kids. As I say, I'm a librarian for all people, not just people who want to read books. You know, I'm here for your anime discussions, as well as some makerspace fun. And yes, we can have a chess club. So all of those things happen in the library.
Teresa, what are your thoughts?
So I hope this doesn't sound bad, but kind of like what Marie said, like I kind of try not to look at the uniqueness of the schools. Like, of course, with book selection, like I try to pay attention to language and levels. Like if there's a big Spanish population, I try to purchase Spanish language books. And, you know, if I know there's, you know, like an AP class here and they're reading higher level stuff, I try to do that. But like they're kids. They're kids. They're just kids, and their teachers are teachers, and they all need the same things, and they are all part of the DOE community, and they're all in this building, and they all have to follow all the same rules, and they all share one library. So I think rather than trying to like serve everybody and go nuts, which is what I tried to do in the beginning, and I was like, okay, well, like this quarter of the budget has to be spent on like music books because they're music school. I just try to think of them as like, we're all equal, we're all the same, we all have the same access. I try to give lots of variations, and I try to be as diverse as possible in all sense of the word. But like they're teenagers, they're all teenagers. They walk by the puzzle table, every single kid from every single school is still stopping to try to find a piece of the puzzle and try to put the jigsaw puzzle together. It doesn't matter what school they go to, you know, like they're just like weird little teenagers, and I miss them terribly. But my strategy is just kind of like, we're all part of one building, we're all in one community. I would rather look at it through that lens than try to separate it out. It just keeps my sanity, but also I just think it's true.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Christina and Donna, do you want to share anything real quick? I think we just have like 5 minutes left, but I'd love to hear from both of you.
Teresa spoke earlier about bringing together the GSAs at her school, and I think that that's one thing that is unique in my job as a campus librarian. I've spoken before about how some of the work I do is kind of like a switchboard operator, connecting resources to people who might want them, especially in terms of teachers. So working in the campus library, you're the one shared academic resource in a building, as Rachel will say. And so I can know that sometimes I'll find out things that are overlapping, like before the year before the pandemic, one teacher was inviting one of our favorite authors in, Marco Shiro, to talk about mental health. He was coming back for a follow-up visit with just students from her class. And at the same time, another teacher in a different school his students were working on a video project about mental health. And I was like, I know you guys are making this video and you want to interview me, but I don't want to be on the video. And I was like, but do you know, upstairs, this is happening. It would be like perfect. So I was able to connect those two teachers and their students to the same opportunity. Whereas, unfortunately, a lot of times in a campus, the schools try to operate in silos and they don't share information like that. So the library is a nice way to share information between schools within the same building.
Donna, what are your thoughts to kind of bring it home for us? And you also have this kind of bird's eye view in addition to your unique library view.
Yes. And I think one thing that I find to be very important is working for 3 or more, like working for 2 or more schools you can almost feel kind of schizophrenic, like, okay, so I have to like do this for this school, and then this school is very into the arts and that school is very into like phys ed. But if you lead with the mission and vision of what the library should look like for all students, then you really can't fail, right? So that should be at the forefront of your mind as the instructional leader of the library. And I think Teresa mentioned this about trying to do all the things. And what's really important is just to keep it simple. Especially during the pandemic, we are doing a lot. And I feel like we keep on being asked to do more. And you need to focus in and say, okay, I'm going to really excel at these 3 things. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to have 1,500 different clubs or try to go into every single classroom, but I am going to have a website, push out Sora, and make myself available on Zoom or on Google Meets, right? And then have fidelity with those 3 things.
Thank you so much, Donna. We have to,
okay,
I'm being told we have to wrap it up.
Got it.
So I dropped in the chat, and I'll do it again, this survey that we created. This group of campus librarians we have an action item for you, and it is to fill out this survey to connect with the Office of Library Services. Do you need a librarian? Do you need help advocating for a library? Maybe you want to hook up with the CLN. I know Russell West from New Visions dropped his email in the chat. And maybe Russell, actually, you could do that again. That would be amazing. But this bit.ly link is to a survey. And yes, and as Christina says in the chat, if you don't have a library or a librarian yet, definitely fill this out. Someone from OLS will get in touch with you and help you make it happen. Anything else from our panel? We're so happy that everyone came today. Sorry we didn't have time to discuss, but hopefully, we can continue this in the shared spaces of the conference today. Thank you so much to everyone on the panel. I always learn so much from this group of people. And just, I feel like there's so much today. I want to rewatch this recording. Thank you for all of these beautiful bites of wisdom. Thank you.